Hello everyone, I'm AndyDavo and this is going to be my comprehensive guide to Wood Elves in Blood Bowl 2. Now I'm going to cover an awful lot in this video, so if there's a specific section you're interested in, just check out the comments below and it'll have hyperlinks to all the different bits in there. Some of the topics we'll cover are the initial roster, then following that the player development, both defensive and offensive setups. We're going to cover off offensive drives, how you can score quickly, how you can score slowly, what sort of differences you've got there. We're going to cover off defensive strategy, how you press and to make that work, how you stand off and can frustrate your opponent. We'll cover off inducements, so before the game, and then because this is Blood Bowl 2, I'm also going to cover off the stadiums as well, and what sort of stadiums you might want to take. So that's a short synopsis of the video. Now, moving on, why are we doing Wood Elves? Well, for me, Wood Elves, or Woodies as they're known, are a great team. They're one of the most powerful teams at all different team values, even straight out the box, all the way up to the top tier values of just over 2,000. And the reason that they're one of my favourites is because I think they're a team that take a lot of skill to play, but they are so devastating when played well. Let's have a quick look at the actual team and maybe you'll get a flavour for why I think that. So here we've got the 5 different positionals that a Wood Elf team can have. The first one is the only elf, it is a tree man. It's the only elf team that gets a big guy, and it is move 2, strength 6, agility 1, but armour 10. And the armour 10, strength 6 combo here is the thing that you're looking for. And that just sort of plants in the middle of the pitch and tries to offer a bit of pitch control, while also being a bit of a damage shield for the rest of your team. So against the strength teams, it can tie up a couple of players. Next, we move on to the stars of the show. These you can have 2 of. You will always take 2 of them. If one dies, you should be looking to instantly replace it. And these are the war dancers. They are move 8, strength 3, agility 4, and armor 7. And you'll notice the rest of the team are all armor 7, so quite a flimsy team. But it comes with block, dodge, and leap straight out of the box. So that, for me, is sometimes that's how you would sort of try and develop at least a block and dodge. An elf, so he's got 2 free level ups before you've even done anything. If you start sticking a couple of skills in there, these players can become truly devastating. And straight out of the box, they're great for stealing the ball. And once developed, they just get to be truly frightening players. So war dancers, possibly one of the best players in the game. Next, you've got catchers. They've actually changed a little bit over the years. They used to be a lot faster than they are now, and so they've actually now got sprint to try and mitigate the fact that they're only move 8. I say only move 8. Most players are actually movement 6, so they're faster. Not quite as strong as the war dancer, but they move 8, strength 2, agility 4, armor 7, and they've also got catch, dodge, and the sprint, as we've mentioned there. So effectively, they can move 11 squares in a turn, because they can make 3 go for it, and with the catch and dodge skills, they're very mobile players for picking the ball up or being handed the ball and then running off. Great players. You've had 4 of those, and typically you'll probably try and run up to all 4, but it's unlikely you'll have a 4 for a long period of time because they do die. Next, thrower, a bit of a specialist position this one. Movement 7, agility, strength 3, agility 4, armor 7, with the pass skill there. Throwers, you do tend to only take the 1. You can give them, well, we'll go through the level ups in a little while, but they tend to sit as your quarterback, receive the ball and throw down the field. Good player, but you can have 2, but you probably only want to take 1. Then you move on to the final player in the team, and that is the lineman. And 7, 3, 4, 7. For some teams, that'd actually be one of their positionals. For a Wood Elf team, that's just a lineman. Doesn't have to have any starting skills, but does have access to both general and agility, so you can get block and dodge. Same with all the other players on this team, and you tend to just sort of fill holes. But once given a couple of skills, these players are also very, very capable and really can be very effective. So everyone on the team is great. Good agility, very quick. And right, in this section we're going to talk about starting rosters. And for me, while there are a lot of different ones published on the internet. I think there really are only 2 different viable or powerful starting rosters. The first one is this one, and this one I would typically use for league play, where you are thinking long term. So it's not quite as powerful in the short term, but it does mean that you can afford a setback earlier on. First of all, gone for the 2-team rerolls. I feel like on a Wood Elf team, you really, because you are thinking about leaping in, you can't really afford to start with 1 or no rerolls most of the time. And so I've put 2 rerolls. The 2 War Dancers, as we've just discussed, they are the best players in the in the team. So 2 War Dancers, 1 Catcher, because you're allowed to have 1 positional, and then the rest linemen down to 11. In the first couple of games, if the linemen die, it doesn't really matter. All you need to do is just protect these 3 players, let them level up, and then if any of the linemen get the MVP, just throw a quick pass with them to the catcher, which is why we've taken a catcher, not a thrower, and so it should be fairly easy to get some decent development on the team. The other team that we've gone for, or the other roster we've gone for, is for Blood Bowl 2. We've got a champion ladder, which is in open environment. If your team dies, you just restart it and you can start again, so you can be a little bit more aggressive with this. And you'll notice the first thing is we've dropped a team reroll, but I've got some more positionals. So now, instead of having 3 players with dodge reroll, I've now got 5. So I've got the 2 War Dancers again because they're so important. Then we've got 3 catchers, and we've also got a thrower. In this particular scenario, what I'd look to try and do is pick the ball up with a thrower in the first game, throw a couple of passes with him, score a touchdown with him, and try and get leader on him. So after the first game, you're back to the position of the other team, but you've got 1 reroll and 1 leader reroll, but now I've got 5 players with dodge rather than just the 1. The problem with this is that because you've only got the 1 reroll, if you get any bad dice at all, that 1 reroll will very quickly disappear and you are more susceptible. So when it works, it's brilliant, but it also has a much rare risk. So with the champion ladder format letting you restart, you can take the upside and you can mitigate against your downside. So there for me are the 2 best rosters. There are others, these are mine. Right, so let's have a quick look at leveling up a team. I've put all the different positionals on here for you, and there is considering the first couple of skills for each player. The first one we're going to click into is the Tree Man. I've also written it on here, so for anyone who doesn't really follow Blood Bowl 2 skill icons, you can just have a quick look at the text, and I've put the first 3 or 4 skills in there. So for Tree Man, grab and guard as your normal 2 skills to start with, and if you do get a double, it'd be block, and if you get a chance to roll a movement increase, absolutely be taking that. Couple of things, if you get choice between a double 5, so you've got the choice of between a block and a movement, both are great skills. There's probably no wrong answer, so don't worry about that, but it probably block just about edges it for me, but I think they're very close. The reason movement in on a tree is very important is because any player with 2 movement or less, when they get knocked over, they have to roll up, take a roll, a standing up roll to get up again, and that's a 4+. So because the tree's got loner, and you're effectively looking at a straight 4 up, which you can't really re-roll unless it's a really important roll to get back on his feet again. So block means you don't fall over as much. Movement means you don't have to make the roll at all. Block, of course, also helps on offense. So that's what I would level the tree in. Grab and guard. Guard because guard's just a great skill, and grab helps you with 1 turning, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. So that's me as a treeman. Next 2, bear in mind you're probably running both War Dancers at the same time, and this isn't a typo. This is actually deliberately how you tend to skill both War Dancers. One takes strip ball and then tackle, and the other just does the opposite. So they go tackle first and then strip ball. So they end at the same place, but you end up having 1 tackle and 1 strip ball straight away. The reason you do that is because you don't know what you're facing off against. If you're playing against a team with no sure hands, then the strip ball one is dominant. If you're playing against things just with dodge, then the tackle one's dominant. So Depends what you need, but ultimately though, both of those two skills are core skills on a ward answer, so you'll take both. A little bit down the line, you're probably considering things like sidestep, jump up, fend, diving tackle's not terrible. So there's some more normal key skills. And then other people sometimes will take frenzy on a ward answer. For me, it takes their player a little bit out of position, and that frenzy player probably could just be done on a lineman. But that's worth consideration. Double skills, mighty blow, juggernaut are very good, and some people also, just as a normal skill, will stick wrestle on a ward answer, because if it's going to go and do ball sacking, having wrestle instead of block is generally preferable, because both down knocks you down inside a cage and puts the ball on the floor. So that's ward answers. Next we've got catchers. Now you are allowed four catchers, so there are many different ways that you can build a catcher, and there are a lot of different career progressions. The first is probably the most obvious for a catcher because they're movement 8. You try and build a one-turning catcher. So if you get a move increase offered to you, you'll take that. If you get a double move increase offered to you, then it's a natural one-turner, means you can stick it on the halfway line and you can score if handed the ball before your opponent is moved. Movement 9 with sidestep and sure feet means that you only need one push to get the guy into scoring range, and with sidestep that makes it a lot easier. So that's one way. You will always probably try and build a catcher in that direction, so that's important. I like a ball recovery catcher, and so I go sure hands as a first skill on one of my catchers, and that is because he's got dodge and he's quick. If the ball is on the floor, chances are he can probably get there, and with dodge and sure hands you've got natural inbuilt re-rolls to get that ball out again, and recovered and back out again. Block is because it's just a nice safe skill to take, so that for me is a second route. I haven't shown it here, but other routes generally can be the ball hawk type player, so you can go block, sidestep, tackle, diving tackle. That's viable, but with strength 2 I find personally that they're a little bit easy to deal with, whereas at least on a strength 3 player you need to provide some assists. I don't really think there's, or you can go the ball hawk route, where you go wrestle and tackle and strip, but because you've got ward answers already probably fulfilling that role, I don't really see that either of those two last professions have as much merit as one of those two just there. Next up is the thrower. As we've just discussed in the intro, you're probably only going to take one of those, and I've put 4 skills on a thrower, considering those 4 as core skills. Anything above that is extra, and they are leader, generally to help the Wood Elves get the 3 rerolls or potentially 4 rerolls you might want. I've taken accurate, which is this little symbol here, and that makes your passes a lot more accurate. You can throw over 6 squares now on a 2+, and with pass you've got an inbuilt reroll. Dodge for a bit of mobility, which is this one here, and sure hands just for recovering the ball in the backfield. If you need to score in 2 turns, you don't want to be using your reroll on a failed pickup. Then onto the lineman. First of all, you've got a utility lineman, and that was kick, and that's probably one of the very first skills you'll pick up on a lineman, because controlling where the ball is on the pitch, which we'll talk about in a little while, is very, very important. So for me, kick on Wood Elves is a critical and core skill, and probably consider it as their first skill on a lineman. And then I've gone with wrestle dodge, dodge wrestle, wrestle dodge, dodge wrestle. So linemen after the first level, lineman that levels, I split them. 50% get dodge, 50% get wrestle, and then they meet up in the middle, and they take the other skill that they didn't take on the first skill roll. Reason for that is because for me, Wood Elves are all about going to fetch the ball, trying to recover it, trying to create holes, be able to move around. So wrestle on a both down result can put both players on the floor. Against strength teams, no one wants to be on the floor, so that can create a gap where there wasn't one before. And then the dodge is just for mobility, because you don't want to be using your team rerolls on silly things like dodging, when there are more important things to use your reroll on, like leaping and stripping the ball and throwing 2 dice uphill blocks and stuff like that. So wrestle dodge. I have also included just on the bottom 2 just if you get past 31 points on the normal skill, what you might take. So I quite like a frenzy play, control the sidelines, and if anyone who's watched any of my play will understand why. And then the general sort of normal skill I would put on a lineman is probably fend, even potentially ahead of sidestep, because fend is all about trying to keep yourself out of base contact, whereas sidestep just lets you revolve around where that player's going to go. But there's nothing wrong with sidestep either. So they're the skills for me. On this, if any one of the linemen was to get a double, it would instantly be guard for me. If a catcher gets a double, it's probably still guard. If a thrower gets a double, then I think that's either strong arm or guard. But the general consensus here is that guard is a great skill for Wood Elves, and it lets them just fight back and push into the team wherever they can. So try and skill your team. If you've got this one idea, try and skill your team to help you on defense, because that's where the Wood Elves need to be strongest. Scoring really should be really easy for them. So skill your players for defense and let the offense take care of itself, pretty much. Okay.
So let's have a quick look at inducements. And for a Wood Elf team, we've got a lot of different choices. However, there are some absolute sort of top picks, and then there are things that you really should avoid wherever possible. First of all, we're going to look at the basics things that you get available for all the different teams. So you've got Bloodwiser Babes, which is +1 modifier for recoveries on KOs. You've got extra team rerolls. Notice they're twice as expensive as you would pay for them on your normal team. So unless you really need a team reroll, do try and avoid it, because you're not getting any value for money there. Team rerolls, probably the only time you'd pick these up in inducement phase are where you've got an absolutely rookie team, when you maybe only got 1 or 2 team rerolls. Once you've got to 3 team rerolls, kind of avoid these. There absolutely are better picks out there. Just going back to Babes, Babes get an awful lot more value if you're in a knockout format where the game is likely to go in overtime. So if you're going into overtime, do consider a Babe, not just for Wood Elves, for most teams, but overall, Babes offer a good value for money, and are generally one of those things that just fill up and use up the last bit of your inducements money rather than a first pick inducement. Then we've got a Wizard. Wizards probably could have their own section, and I'm sure in a later guide video I will actually do how to use a Wizard, because this is the absolute #1 pick for a Wood Elf team. As soon as you can get to 150k, you take it. In a league team, you might even consider altering around your team value a little bit to make sure you do pick up one. They are absolutely game-defining inducements when they work. So Wizard, absolutely top pick. Next, Bribe. Bribes really are not something you want to be picking up, not over a Wizard anyway, and do try and avoid them unless you're running a dirty player, because there are just better picks out there for the first about 400k's worth of inducements. So first 150k for me would be a Wizard. Next up, Halfling Master Chef. Chefs are 300k for Wood Elf teams, and 300k represents an awful lot amount of spend for something that you really shouldn't need. So do try and avoid this one, unless you've got over 1,000 inducements to spend. I think a chef is a big fat waste of time. Wandering Apothecaries, unless you've not got one, there are better things to spend your money on. Unless it's a potential league team and you're playing against a kill team and you just want to avoid having your team killed. Now let's quickly move on to the star players. So we've got Jor-El Freshbreeze, Eldril Sidewinder, Morgan Thorg, Dolphar Longstride, Willow Rosebark, and Zara the Slayer. First of all, go backwards through the list. So Zara the Slayer, which is a Amazon line woman blitzer with a strength increase, blodge, block and dodge, dauntless, jump up, stab, and stakes. If you're playing against an undead team, not terrible, but for 270k, you could have a Wizard and another player. So not generally a pickup for Wood Elves. There are better choices out there. Willow Rosebark, a bit like a Treeman, not really the best pickup that you can find. And for 150k, which is the same price as a Wizard, would I rather have a Willow or a Wizard? I'm afraid it's the other W. I'll have the Wizard, thank you ever so much. Dolphar Longstride has an awful lot of interesting skills. Kick off return, we've got pass block, we've got kick, we've got Hail Mary pass, we've got diving catch. That's lovely, but he doesn't have any core skills. He's only armor 7, and he is someone you can generally try and avoid. Morgenthorg. For someone who is 430k, which is the same price as a wizard and a Eldril and some other stuff, I would avoid. However, if you were playing with 1,000 TV of inducements, then I would consider him. We're just going to finish the video off and jump back because I've run out of time. So we'll just jump back in a second and talk about the last two. So jumping back into this, we've got the next star player, which is Eldril Sidewinder. Eldril Sidewinder, once you pick the wizard up for the first 150k, is probably the next player you're going to pick up. Well, the next thing you should be picking up if you've got 350k to spend total. And that is because of one specific skill which you've got just here. Hypnotic Gaze. Hypnotic Gaze allows you to hypnogaze a player, which takes away their tackle zones. Now, if you combine that up with a Blitz and a Wizard, so first of all, you drop your Lightning Bolt, you zap the ball carrier. The next thing is you possibly run over to a cage corner and you hypnogaze it, taking away some tackle zones. Then you can use your Blitz and you can move in and move another player out of the way. The path should be clear for you to be able to pick up the ball and take it away and put it somewhere secure, or score with it all in one action. So Eldril and a Wizard is absolutely what Wood Elves are all about, and I would recommend this as being a top pick over and above absolutely anything else. The next thing is Jor-El Fresh Breeze. Jor-El Fresh Breeze is a war dancer, but with an agility increase, and has also got additional skills which are sidestep and diving catch. So he can catch the ball in 2 tackle zones on a 2+. The problem is he doesn't have a natural reroll and does have loner. So if you're relying on him to do anything like leaping, which is on a 2, or catching, then you've got to be prepared to take the chance that at about sort of 1 in 6 time he is going to fail it. So Jor-El, while a good player, not as good as Eldril, not as good as a Wizard, and probably be in my next band after 350k to start considering. But don't pick him up straight away unless you want to see what the model looks like. Thank you. Okay. Hello everyone. Right, let's have a quick look at something that's specific to Blood Bowl 2, and that is stadium enhancements. The first thing to note is how you get there, which is you go from along the top, you go to the club tab, and then the next thing to note is that you need to have managed to get your stadium to level 2 before you can take advantage of the free enhancement. And that is that you need to go to Play Upgrade, and I've actually already purchased up to level 2, and so that costs 100k. You can go to level 3 and level 4, but they don't actually change anything, nor does level 2. It's just a cosmetic thing that makes the stadium look a little bit bigger when you're actually playing a game in your home stadium. Once you've done that and got this to level 2 and spent 100k there, you're then able to spend 100k more and buy one of these inducements, which we're going to go quickly through now. The first one is the Magician's Shop, and that says that during the inducements phase, both teams will receive a wizard at no cost. Now, note here that Wood Elves do really well with wizards, so ordinarily this isn't actually a bad pickup at all. There are a couple of things that you might choose not to take this, and that is that if you're playing uphill team value all of the time, because maybe you're in a perpetual league, then you can pick that up in the regular inducements phase, and your opponent then doesn't get a wizard. But if you're playing downhill an awful lot of team value because you're the overdog, then this is absolutely a good pick and should be considered. In a matchmaking environment where you don't know whether you're playing up or down, it becomes a little bit less valuable, and so I wouldn't necessarily pick it for a champion ladder or an open ladder format. I think this is probably more private league play, and again in this probably what best for the specific conditions as mentioned. The next one, you've got a security gate, and this is the Riot and Pitch Invasion kickoff events are cancelled. A Riot is where the turn marking can go backwards or forwards depending on where you are in the state of the game. If you're at the end of the half, it always goes backwards, and this is the bit that I'm interested in. So maybe your opponent has driven down the pitch, you haven't managed to stop their drive, and they've scored in 8 turns. You then have your 1-turner or 1-turn attempt. If you get a Riot come up, you've now got 2 turns, and as we've discussed elsewhere in this video, Wood Elves are very adept at scoring in 2 turns, so you don't want to cancel out something you're very good at, so Riot is a really bad one. Then Pitch Invasion, which is on a d6 roll of a 6 for each player, they end up being stunned, so it knocks over an awful lot of players on the kickoff table when that comes up. Wood Elves being so fast can recover from that really well. Some of the slow teams can't, and so Riot and Pitch Invasion are actually pretty good kickoff results for you generally, and so I would avoid the security gate at all costs in almost all forms, as I think the downside for you is far better than the upside. Next one, Beer Stand, one of my favourite enhancements in this in general, but generally not for Wood Elves, unless you've managed to go for a frenzy player, whether that's a frenzy war dancer or a lineman. Pushing people off the field isn't something you're likely to be doing very often, so you won't get an awful lot of benefit from it. Chances are you're not going to get surfed yourself, but it'll just be a sort of a cosmetic thing that doesn't really do a lot for anyone. So there are better picks out there. While it's not bad, I just think there are better picks. So I'd probably put this one down as an avoid, unless you're playing for it. Next one, referee rest area. During the inducements phase, both teams receive a bribe at no cost. Unlike the wizard, you are able to then pick up additional bribes if you so choose, but as we talked about in the inducements phase, taking the bribe isn't something you're normally going to do straight away. So unless you're running a dirty player and unless you're prepared to have your war dancers failed, I would avoid this one. Just think through the scenario where you've leapt into someone's cage, you've rolled a 2, you've re-rolled it, you've rolled a 2 again, and the war dancer's face down, but hasn't gone off the field, but it's now inside their cage. Most opponents are going to gleefully take the opportunity to kick one of your most important players in the head, so I would avoid this unless you have a specific style of play which is going to avoid that scenario coming up very often. So that's an avoid for me. The next two are actually very similar. You've got the Astra Granite playing surface, which is +1 on normal rolls when the player fails to go for it, and a -1 on normal rolls when a player go for it on Elf Turf. So if you're someone, this comes down to your coaching style, so if you're someone that it makes a lot of go for it regularly, then Elf Turf probably is better for you, because Wood Elves are one of the lowest armor teams in the game, and therefore you're going to get probably it's going to be bad for you. If, however, you make no go for it whatsoever and you want to just try and put a little bit extra pressure on your opponents, then an Astra Granite playing surface is probably the pick for you. I don't really take either of them, generally speaking, and I wouldn't advise it. I think, again, there are probably just better picks out there, but if you are going to pick one, consider your own playing style. On a cosmetics note, the Astra Granite playing surface does look pretty cool, so even if you don't pick it for a Wood Elf team, do try and take it on one of your teams just so you can see the difference it changes the pitch, because it does look pretty cool inside the game. Next one, Royal Box. This one really doesn't have a great deal of effect unless you're going for records of fan factor, doubles and gains or losses of fan factor. It'd be lovely if you didn't cost anything and you could set it up initially, but because it costs you 100k to get there and you've already spent 100k to the point where you can afford to level the stadium up, you're 200k in, being slightly over someone else in fan factor doesn't really help you that much. So I would avoid this one unless you're in a league play where you're trying to get to 18 fan factor, or some other, you have a specific achievement you're trying to unlock. So this one's an avoid for me. Next one, the Throw a Rock and Get the Ref events are cancelled via Squig Sandwich Kiosk. Throw a Rock, first of all, is D6 plus your fame for each player. So, and then it's a straight injury roll on one member of your team or their team, or if you roll the same overall total, then it's one player on both teams. That generally is a bad thing for a Wood Elf team. You don't want to be going down players. So I don't like Throw a Rock. I think if you can get rid of it, that'd be great. And then the Get the Ref, which is both teams get a bribe. We've just discussed how the fact that I don't like bribes, therefore, for both of the things in this particular enhancement to be got rid of, I would take that. And so Squig Sandwich Kiosk at the moment is one of those picks that I would absolutely be looking at, and this is in my top 2 or 3 for a Wood Elf team. Next one, Nuffle's Altar. During the inducements phase, star players cost 50k less. So as we talked through during the inducements phase, star players eligible Sidewinder to 200k if you knock it down to 150k. Unless you're on the cusp of really needing that additional 50k, this isn't going to help you that much. It's really designed for the cheap star players for things like Underworld and Goblins, so this is an avoid for me. unless you're in a specific set of circumstances, that does actually help you. And then we've got the last one, which is the Magic Dome. Magic Dome says the weather always starts as nice, and the changing weather event is kickoff event is cancelled. Now, generally speaking, Wood Elves actually do pretty well from the changed weather conditions, and if you just think them through, Blizzard will be really quick, so you don't need to make too many go for it, so that's fine. You've got sweltering heat. You can afford to be down players, they can afford to be down players. You're probably going to do well, that's fine. You've got very sunny passing actions. Well, if you really needed to, just hand it off, and that avoids that one. And then you've got pouring rain, which is the one that a lot of teams don't like, which is -1 to picking up the ball or handing off, catching. Sorry, -1 to catching. So when you take an agility 4 player and you move it now, so it's a 3+ to do anything, that's not the end of the world for Elves. You just got to be a little bit more careful. If you take a human team or a orc team or a chaos team, any of the agility 3 teams, and you now make it a 4+ to handle the ball, they are absolutely not going to want to move the ball at all other than the initial pickup, so it makes it quite risky. And then if you take a Khemri team, Khemri teams which are agility 2, that means it's now a 5+ pickup, and that's horrendous for them. So you can cope with the weather change pretty well. A lot of the other teams can't, so I would avoid this one. I think you're helping your opponent more than you're going to be helping yourself most of the time. So if we quickly go through them again, my top picks would be Magician's Shop, depending on your circumstance. We've got a Astra Granite or Elf Turf, again, depending on your circumstance, but probably not above the other one. Royal Box is a little bit fluffy. That one, Squig Sandwich Kiosk, is probably my favourite pick. So I would go Squig Sandwich Kiosk level first. I'd go Magician Shop second, and I'd probably go Knuffles Altar third. But overall, there aren't an awful lot of different enhancements that help the Wood Elf team, as much as they do help some of the others.